Why most people quit right before their breakthrough. No one talks about it. No one warns you in advance. Most people quit in the silence, in the shadow, in the quiet hours when no one is watching, and the world has not yet acknowledged their struggle. They quit not because they lack talent, not because they lack ideas, not because they are incapable. They quit because the moment before victory is always the hardest, and the human spirit, untrained and unprepared, mistakes struggle for defeat. Look closely at history, and you will see it repeated over and over. Thomas Edison had tried thousands of times to make the electric light work. Every failure, every sparkless filament could have broken him, and yet he continued because he understood something that most people never learn. Breakthrough lives one step beyond frustration. One more attempt. One more iteration. One more refusal to accept impossibility. Most people stop at 99 attempts because the 100th demands courage they have not yet nurtured. They stop because the discomfort of uncertainty outweighs the imagined comfort of giving up. They stop because society has trained them to fear failure rather than to reframe it as feedback. Breakthrough is always disguised as struggle. It comes wrapped in doubt, cloaked in difficulty, hidden behind delay. And the mind that is untrained in endurance sees it as a wall, a signal, a reason to quit. But the mind that is trained in persistence sees it as the prelude to triumph, the necessary friction that ignites greatness. Napoleon Hill described this as the point of testing, the moment when desire and discipline collide, and most people fail because they only possess desire. Desire is not enough. Anyone can want wealth, recognition, love, mastery, or freedom. Desire whispers promises of greatness, but whispers are drowned out when resistance hits. It is discipline, focus, and relentless action that carry a person past the breaking point. Consider Abraham Lincoln. For years he failed in business, lost multiple elections, and faced rejection after rejection. To the casual observer, he was a man defeated by life. Yet he persisted, not because he was naive, but because he understood that his breakthrough was coming, not in spite of struggle, but through struggle. His resolve sharpened with each failure, each public humiliation, each day spent laboring in silence. By the time the world recognized his genius, he had already built it within himself. Breakthrough does not happen at convenience. It happens in the crucible of discomfort, in the lonely hours when no one applauds, when progress seems invisible. And that is precisely why most people quit. They cannot endure the invisible grind. They cannot tolerate delayed recognition. They cannot reconcile the gap between effort and immediate reward. Yet those who endure learn something extraordinary. Persistence transforms perception. The obstacle that once seemed insurmountable becomes a step. The rejection that once stung becomes a lesson. The waiting that once frustrated becomes preparation. Each act of endurance builds a muscle within the spirit, a muscle most people never develop because most people stop before it forms. The truth is brutal and beautiful. The difference between success and failure is almost never talent, almost never luck, almost never timing. It is stamina. It is the ability to endure long enough, to fight past the temptation to quit, to refuse to surrender even when every signal, every doubt, every discomfort screams, "Stop." Walt Disney faced bankruptcy and ridicule before anyone understood his vision. He was laughed at, mocked, dismissed, and yet he persisted. Why? Because he refused to let the opinion of the present world determine the reality of his future. That refusal, that mental toughness, that internal conviction is exactly what most people lack. Most people quit because they are willing to trade temporary pain for imagined comfort. They fail to understand that the discomfort is the bridge to the reward. Breakthrough does not arrive in gentle whispers. It arrives in pressure. It arrives in challenge. It arrives precisely when quitting seems like the easiest option. And it is in that exact moment, when the body says no, when the mind trembles, when the world appears indifferent, that the choice is made. The choice to quit, or the choice to endure, to persist, to act anyway. The human mind is capable of far more than the average person believes. But it will never reach that capacity if it quits at the first taste of resistance. It is when resistance reaches its peak that transformation occurs. Edison, Lincoln, Disney, Carnegie, Ford, all endured more than most people could imagine. And all were moments away from quitting when their breakthroughs finally arrived. Persistence is not about luck. It is not about circumstance. It is not about waiting for the perfect conditions. It is about showing up every day, refining your craft, training your mind, and embracing the friction that shapes greatness. It is about refusing to leave the field just because the reward is delayed. And that refusal, that stubborn insistence to continue despite the visible absence of success, is what separates the remembered from the forgotten. Because here's the truth most people never admit. Breakthrough is a process disguised as impossibility. The days feel endless. The work seems invisible. The results are microscopic. And the mind, untrained in patience, begins to whisper, "You've done enough. Stop. Rest. Let someone else try." That whisper is death to potential. That whisper is the reason the world is filled with almosts, could have beens, and might have beens. But the few who persist, those who understand the rhythm of endurance, they hear a different message. They hear the sound of progress hidden beneath the struggle, the faint pulse of possibility behind the pain. They understand that discomfort is not punishment, it is the forge. It tempers skill, sharpens resolve, and aligns vision with reality. They understand that every obstacle is a clue, every delay a teacher, every moment of doubt a signal that they are closer than they think. Clarity emerges through persistence. As you endure, as you refuse to quit, the fog lifts. The vision that once felt distant becomes tangible. The path that seemed impossible begins to take shape. And in that moment, you realize that success was never about luck. It was about training yourself to act when others would flee. It was about proving to your own mind that you are stronger than fear, braver than discomfort, and more committed than any temporary sensation of pain. Belief, then, is no longer abstract. It is concrete. It is forged in the furnace of action, shaped by repeated victories over hesitation, doubt, and weakness. The person who refuses to quit cultivates an inner authority, a certainty that cannot be shaken by external opinion or temporary failure. Napoleon Hill wrote about faith as a principle of achievement, not faith in magic, but faith in yourself, in your ability to endure, to adapt, to keep moving when all evidence says stop. Action becomes relentless, not impulsive, not chaotic, but disciplined, measured, and repeated. Each step builds upon the last. Each small victory compounds, and the longer you persist, the more momentum accumulates, until the breakthrough arrives, not as a miracle, but as the inevitable consequence of a mind unwilling to surrender. Henry Ford faced financial collapse, criticism, and repeated failure before revolutionizing the automobile industry. He persisted not because he knew the outcome, but because he refused to be defeated by circumstance. Edison faced endless failure before lighting the world. Carnegie persevered through poverty and ridicule before becoming a titan of industry. These giants of history did not quit because they had a secret beyond ordinary men. They endured when ordinary men would have surrendered. And that is the distinction. The difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary is measured not in talent, intelligence, or opportunity, but in the willingness to continue when quitting seems logical, to endure the stretch, to fight through the resistance, to act in spite of fear. That is where transformation is born. That is where potential crystallizes into achievement. Resilience is the companion of persistence. It is what allows you to recover from setbacks without losing momentum. Life will test you. It will challenge you. It will present conditions so hostile that giving up feels like sanity. But resilience does not remove the struggle. It strengthens you in it. It teaches you to see failure as feedback, rejection as a signal, delay as preparation. The resilient mind converts obstacles into stepping stones and pressure into propulsion. Learning becomes instinctive. The person who refuses to quit studies every misstep, every delay, every complication, extracting lessons that others overlook. They adapt, they evolve, they refine, because they understand that persistence without growth is stagnation. The bridge to breakthrough is not crossed by brute force alone. It is crossed by intelligent endurance, by disciplined reflection, by action sharpened by experience. Gratitude anchors the persistent mind. Gratitude for struggle. Gratitude for pressure. Gratitude for the invisible hours that forge strength, skill, and character. It is gratitude that prevents resentment from creeping in when progress seems slow. It is gratitude that allows you to endure without bitterness, to continue without collapse, to persist with joy even when the world appears indifferent. And finally, timing reveals itself. Breakthrough does not arrive before its time, but it never arrives late. The world is not unfair. It is precise. The universe does not reward impatience or impulsive desire. It rewards preparation, endurance, and the willingness to act when no one else will. The breakthrough is waiting just beyond the threshold where most people quit, a threshold few ever dare to cross. The few who persist understand this intuitively. They know that the bridge between struggle and triumph is walked one determined step at a time. They know that quitting is always a choice, but enduring is a decision that transforms destiny. They know that the moment before victory is the crucible in which greatness is forged, and they refuse to leave before the fire has done its work. And when you persist, vision crystallizes. What once felt like a distant, flickering dream suddenly becomes tangible. The details sharpen. The path forward, once obscured by doubt and distraction, now reveals itself in clarity and precision. You see not only where you are going, but who you must become to arrive. Success is never just an external event. It is the reflection of an inner transformation, forged in the relentless pursuit of a goal that seemed impossible only days ago. Purpose then asserts itself with authority. It is no longer a vague idea whispered in the mind's quiet moments. It becomes a demand, a calling, an unshakable insistence that your life matters not just to you, but to the world that waits silently for your contribution. Carnegie did not build steel simply to accumulate wealth. He built it to construct the framework of modern industry. Lincoln did not endure personal and political torment to satisfy ego. He endured to preserve a nation. The moment before breakthrough is when purpose ignites, when you recognize that your persistence is not self-serving, it is destiny-serving. Action becomes inevitable, not the haphazard flurry of the desperate, but the calculated, relentless, disciplined march of someone who has seen beyond fear, beyond fatigue, beyond the temporary whispers that tell you to stop. Each step compounds the last. Each decision sharpens the next. Momentum builds silently, invisibly, imperceptibly, until one day the world can no longer deny your progress. The breakthrough does not feel sudden because it was unearned. It feels inevitable because you have earned it through every invisible hour of struggle, every refusal to quit, every repeated act of courage when no one else was watching. And in this crucible of effort, belief becomes unshakable. Not belief in vague possibility, not faith in hope alone, but belief fortified by proof. Every obstacle overcome, every late night endured, every setback transformed into a lesson strengthens the conviction that success is not a question of chance. It is a consequence of your endurance. Disney's empire was not born from instant acclaim. It was born from decades of rejection, bankruptcy, ridicule, and relentless belief that his vision could exist even when no one else could see it. That is the type of belief that persists, that outlasts circumstance, that outmaneuvers doubt. Resilience matures alongside it. When the world pushes back, it pushes against someone who is no longer fragile. You absorb the impact without losing momentum. You bend, but you do not break. Every delay becomes a lesson. Every failure becomes fuel. Every criticism becomes a mirror reflecting not your inadequacy, but your readiness for the challenges ahead. Breakthrough is not a gift. It is a reward for resilience practiced, for patience mastered, for courage proven. And then the moment arrives, often quietly, often unnoticed at first. You recognize it not in the applause of others, but in the unwavering certainty within yourself. You have crossed the threshold that so many feared to approach. You have endured the invisible torment of progress. You have persisted when quitting seemed rational. You have acted when hesitation screamed. You have believed when doubt threatened to suffocate. And suddenly, The doors open, the world acknowledges your effort, and the breakthrough, which was always waiting, finally manifests. But the real triumph lies not in the recognition, the wealth, or the acclaim. The real triumph is internal. It is the knowledge that you are no longer the person who could have quit, that you are stronger, wiser, more disciplined, and more capable than you ever imagined, that you have been forged in fire, sculpted by struggle, and trained by persistence. The breakthrough is external only because the internal victory had to come first. And here is the ultimate truth no one teaches. Most people will never see this moment because they quit before it arrived. They surrender at the precipice of victory, not because they cannot achieve it, but because they are unwilling to endure the invisible work that precedes it. The world will not stop, time will not wait, and opportunity will not pause for their hesitation. But those who persist, who refuse to quit, who endure, who act, who believe, will cross into a life that once felt impossible. They will arrive at the fulfillment of a vision that only persistence could birth. Breakthrough is not accidental. It is the inevitable result of repeated action, disciplined endurance, unwavering belief, resilient adjustment, and unshakable purpose. It is the fruit of refusing to quit when quitting seemed easiest, and continuing when hope appeared faintest. It is the reward reserved for those willing to endure the moment everyone else abandons. And once you understand this, once you internalize it, everything changes. You no longer fear struggle. You no longer chase shortcuts. You no longer measure progress by external validation. You measure it by your refusal to quit, by your ability to persist, by your willingness to endure the moment before success manifests, knowing that on the other side lies the life you were always meant to create. And here is where the lesson burns brightest. The moment before breakthrough is sacred. It is the place where dreams are tested, where courage is weighed, where character is forged. Most people flee because it is uncomfortable. They flee because it demands more than they thought they had. They flee because it asks for surrender to process rather than the illusion of instant reward. But the few who remain, the few who endure, they discover that this crucible is not a punishment, but a portal. The struggle is the threshold, and persistence is the key. When you stop fearing the fire, when you stop bargaining with resistance, when you embrace the grind as your teacher rather than your enemy, the breakthrough does not just happen. It arrives naturally, effortlessly, inevitably. Your vision no longer feels like a dream. Your purpose no longer feels like a choice. It becomes your identity. You are no longer chasing success. You are living it, breathing it, commanding it. And the world responds. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly appear. Connections that were hidden now emerge. Solutions that were unimaginable present themselves. Not because the universe owes you, but because you have aligned with the principle that governs all achievement. Endurance creates authority, and authority attracts results. Every historical giant, every revolutionary innovator, every legendary achiever, from Edison to Lincoln, from Carnegie to Disney, all understood this truth instinctively. They endured in silence. They acted in isolation. They believed in invisible results while the world demanded visible proof. And because they persisted, because they refused to quit, because they acted with discipline and clarity in the darkest hours, the impossible became inevitable. Your breakthrough will arrive the same way, not through luck, not through circumstance, not through the fleeting approval of others. It will arrive because you chose persistence when quitting seemed logical, courage when fear screamed, and action when hesitation paralyzed. It will arrive because you became someone who could not be denied, by circumstance, by doubt, or by the passing of time. And when that moment comes, when the doors open, when the reward finally manifests, it will feel unsurprising. Not because it was easy, never because it was easy, but because deep down you always knew. You always knew that quitting was never an option, that endurance was your secret weapon, that every step through struggle was building the foundation for the life you now command. This is the truth most people never learn. Most people will quit right before their breakthrough. Most will trade comfort for opportunity lost. Most will abandon the fight just when victory was within reach. But those who refuse to quit, those who persist with discipline, clarity, purpose, and relentless action, they will achieve everything they once thought impossible. And in that achievement, they discover something far greater than wealth, fame, or recognition. They discover themselves. They discover the limitless capacity of a mind that refuses to surrender. They discover the untapped power of a heart that persists beyond pain. They discover that the bridge between desire and destiny is not luck, not privilege, not ease. It is endurance. So when the fire comes, when the weight presses down, when the world seems indifferent and progress feels invisible, do not quit. Do not surrender. Do not negotiate with fear. Remember that the moment before breakthrough is always the hardest, always the loneliest, and always the most sacred. Step through it. Persist. Endure. Act. And on the other side, you will find not only success, but the unshakable proof that you are capable of greatness beyond measure. Because the world does not hand out victories to the hesitant, the fearful, or the faint-hearted. It rewards those who endure, those who persist, those who continue when quitting seems logical. It rewards those who understand that every setback is a setup, every challenge is a teacher, every delay is a preparation. And it rewards those who refuse to leave the field until they have crossed the finish line that so many others abandoned. This is your moment. This is your crucible. And if you refuse to quit, if you persist with courage, clarity, and unrelenting action, then your breakthrough, inevitable, unstoppable, undeniable, awaits. Because the truth is simple, yet profound. Most people quit right before their breakthrough, but you are not most people. You endure. You persist. You act. And on the other side of that refusal lies the life, the vision, the destiny you were always meant to claim.